This here is North Lake, just one of beautiful lakes that TVA takes care of. They have 49 lakes in the Tennessee Valley, in the states of Virginia, Kentucky, especially Tennessee, North Carolina, all the way down into Alabama, parts of Georgia. They've got a lot of reservoirs. But you ever listen and ever think about these beautiful lakes when you're riding recreation on them, of what's laying and under them? And I know a lot of people don't care, but there's a lot of history forgotten in time. And some of them are graves. Now, they investigated 69,000 graves when they built these lakes throughout these valleys, and they moved and relocated 20,000. But some, they didn't. It is said that I've seen in some memos where there's 5,000 to 7,000 graves still under these lakes. So we're going to look at the story of this relocation and the struggles these people had and the times that this dam's being built. So I hope you enjoy. Now this here is part of the Tennessee Valley. Beautiful country. Rolling mountains from the Smokies up to the Clinch Mountains, Cumberland Mountains, Powell Valley, all kinds of little valleys in the big Tennessee Valley. And it's got all kinds of little rolling rivers. There's about 6 or 7 major river systems in East Tennessee, working its way towards the Tennessee River. Some of them are peaceful, and some of them got some bad shoals in them, especially when the water's up. They could be really treacherous. But the Native Americans, they traveled these waterways for ages. This is their life. They knowed how to travel these railways. And they had villages like this along this river system ages ago. These were the first people in here. These are the ancestors of the Cherokee. And they hunted this land for ages, generation after generation. This was their livelihood, their life. Now the pioneers and settlers started coming in this country about the time of the Revolutionary War, just before, during, or just after. And they come into this rugged land, down this waterways and these river systems, trying to scratch out a living and claim a little piece of land to raise a family. And they started out with little simple dwellings like this, little log cabins, up and down these little hollers, up and down these rivers, all this country. Just trying to establish a little farm. All up and down Appalachia. Beautiful old country like this. Some of them had big farms. And some of them didn't have much of nothing at all. But they lived simple lives. All it took was a little hard work. And they worked the land generation after generation. This is their livelihood. And they made about everything they needed. They were so isolated in these mountains, these hollers. They made it, traded for it, or they just done without. And they had big families too. God bless these hard-working women that raised these families, and the men that tried to support them. So long ago. And you gotta remember, there was no hospital. All they had was a midwife, if they was lucky, and people they called medicine women that got herbs out of these mountains. And as they died from time to time from disease or sickness or an accident or just old age, they take care of their own. Bury them in little cemeteries, little family plots out in the back of the farm, all up and down this countryside. And some are right behind the old country church or right just behind the house. Back in the early days, of just a few graves here and a few graves there. And as time went on, they had little community graveyards, and they still take care of them today. But as time went on, they just raised their families, make a living off the land. But living next to these rivers could be hazardous. It done a lot of flooding sometimes. Some years was worse than others. It flooded whole towns out, whole communities out along these riverways. And about the time the Great Depression hit, stock market crashed in '29, things got hard. But it didn't affect the mountain people as bad as it did in the urban cities, and especially the big cities, of being without jobs. Well, Franklin Roosevelt became our president, and he noted the country was in bad shape for jobs and stuff, so he started a plan called the New Deal. This is to start jobs and stuff on the infrastructure in our country. He formed a CCC, the Citizens Conservation Corps, in about 32, 33. And they would go around the country building whatever needed to be done around the communities. Big projects, some of them. And he started the TVA. What's the TVA? It's the Tennessee Valley Authority. So they thought they would try to control all this flooding in this Tennessee Valley and get electricity out of it in the meantime. But the main thing, they would create a lot of jobs. And here's their dam system. A map of all the dams they built, all the reservoirs. And when they first started out, first for North Lake. They would see the places they're going to build a dam and what land would be affected, and they would get with everybody on it. Who was affected, who wasn't, how much land they had to have, and what they did for them, how much they'd pay for it. Some of them liked it, and some of them didn't. Because this land had been in generations in the family. Well, they started this dam about 1933. North Dam. Here it is, starting. And they put it up quick, too, on the Clinch River. And they set up the CCC camps all along these lakes in dozens of places. This here's one Chuck Swan, Sharp's Chapel, where they tore down all the structures that would be in the lake. They moved moving some of the farms like this one. They moved the farmhouses, or they completely tear them down. Some people just couldn't stand it. It was all they ever know. Some committed suicide. And some of them were just dirt poor. They didn't have nothing. So sometimes this is an improvement to some of the people. And here's the place on North Lake that was mostly affected. Here's North Lake itself, the lake, the area. You can see the dam on the left, but the biggest area affected was the place here circled in yellow. Lewiston Sea, Lost Creek. Now here, this lake is made up of two rivers, Powell River to the north, Clinch River to the south. And these don't look like as much country, but there is a mile across this Lewiston Sea and Lost Creek. A lot of country being under the water. And some places had to be moved, took apart. This is the city of Lewiston. It's all under the water now. These are pictures of here. They dismantled the city, most of it. And it's all underwater. A lot of communities like this around these lakes is gone. The only one I know that was ever saved, that was on the Douglas Lake, on the French Broad River, the city of DONNIE. The only city that I know that was saved from the lake. Here's a picture of him. And all the bridges, there was dozens of bridges. Here's what they done with them. They just shot them down, took them apart, because the lake would be up over. They had to rebuild them. And they only build bridges is on the major fireways. This is on the Highway 33 over the Clinch River. They only put bridges back up on the major highway. So this isolated a lot of places. And in the meantime, archaeologists come from all around the country to help move some of these Native American places. All these ancestral burial grounds that was going to be under the lake. They worked on them as fast, as hard as they could, trying to relocate them and save their history. These are just pictures of some of the places that they'd worked that would be under the water. But they know that a lot of them would always be under the lake. They couldn't get to all of them for the amount of time that they had. Now, for all the cemeteries that was going to be affected by the lake, they had to be moved to another location out from under the lake's harm's way of the lake. And like I told you earlier, they investigated on all the lakes, 69,000 graves, and 20,000 had to be moved. And they done moving them like this. It was hard on the families, hard on them, having to relocate their loved ones. And these are just some of the old TVA pictures. And a lot of them was removed. And a lot of them was not even marked. They don't know who they was. No death certificates back in them days. No birth certificates, no death certificates. They didn't know. And here's the remains of some they moved. They were so old there was nothing left. They had to just pick up the dirt and stuff around them, what few bones, and put them in a box and take them and relocate them. And they relocate them to a bunch of different cemeteries. Now here on North Lake in this area, they moved some to a big barren cemetery and the New Lewiston Cemetery and a couple of other ones. And they done the best they could. And here's a good place if you want to find out any, ancestry on death certificates where people's buried in Union County in Maynardville. They do a good job and they got good records on all these death certificates and burial places. And another thing, I've got for myself personally, my family, my great-grandmother, she was located from out of Lost Creek area, Sharps Chapel, to a Browning Cemetery. But one thing about it, her mother, my great-great-grandmother, can't be accounted for. There's no records of her, where she's buried, can't find her nowhere, been relocated or not. So we think that she's still under the lake. We can't prove one thing one way or another. But a lot of graveyards around here, especially around the Chuck Swan and Peninsula area of Sharps Chapel, a lot of graveyards are still standing. They are old too, and they're took care of. Not a nice graveyard, a lot of history. But some are just forgot about in time. You don't know who's buried here, what families. Time went on, the families died generation after generation, and they're forgotten about. So we don't know who they are. So sad. And from time to time in the early years, late 30s, in the 50s, they had to drop the dam down to lake level to repair some or upgrade the dam. And these are some of the old pictures of what the lake looked like after 10 or 20 years of being underwater. History shows itself again for a short time. Here's a guy walking where Lewiston, city of Lewiston, used to be. You can see off in the distance how high the water level is. Old pictures. You can see how much country that the lake, when it's up at its peak, the land that it covered. When the water was down, you could see glimpses of little communities, old bridges, foundations, old road beds. For only a short time. But soon the lake's back up to its normal level, and all the people with families can only remember what used to be there. Now here's Norris Dam as it looks today. It's an old dam. This is the first dam built in the Tennessee Valley when they started the projects of all these dams. It's a beautiful dam. And all these old families, these proud people of these mountains, they worked so hard. And these, bless their hearts, these women that raised these families and these men that tried to put food on the table, make a living, support these families, so many of them need to be remembered. But this history, you won't see a lot of this in no history books. This is just a footnote, if any. But these people lived hard in these mountains. This is their livelihood, generation after generation. A lot of them under this lake that nobody knows about. Didn't even have a gravestone. Nobody knows about them. They were forgotten. But they'll forever be known by our Lord. He knows where every one of them are and who they are. So no, I'm not no college professor, no specialist at nothing. I'm just an old country boy trying to remember our past. So I want to thank you all for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next time.